Welcome to Soul Logic, not your
Breathy.
spirituality. This is neither tie-dye, running through fairy fields, nor corporate performance metrics. It's about increasing your inner authority and personal freedom, moving you from the corporate mindset to a conscious mindset.
We're your hosts, Cindy and Scott, and we're here to put the practical into awakening.
Welcome to this episode of Soul Logic. Today we are going to talk about relationships, specifically soulmate relationships and karmic relationships. Cindy and I are going to be telling a few stories about our lives and what we've experienced, what we've learned, what we've seen, but also sharing more information that we've learned on these two very interesting topics in this episode.
Even before we started this, I think I'm already learning stuff about soulmates that I don't think I knew. I think it would be awesome if you jumped into this because I think I got some good karmic stories, but I don't know. I would just love to hear your take on soulmate relationships and see where that fits in.
Sure. I feel like I've had a lot of people in my life that fall into the soulmate category, and I've done quite a bit of studying on this and working with different spiritual teachers, reading a lot. Also undergoing some hypnotherapy and past life regression multiple times. So I've really learned a lot from another dimension, so to speak. And I'm going to share a little bit of what I've learned over the years. Accepting the premise that we do reincarnate, and if we accept the idea that this is not a one and done, right? That we have something a little bit deeper inside of us, a larger part of us that is connected to something else. God, the creator, source, universe, whatever label we want to put on it, that it's not all us in this physical skin and bones and organs and all that we are. There's a lot more to us on an energetic level. And that's what's always fascinated me. I've done some research on this, and some of the things that I've learned over the years are that, well, let me start by saying we know when we have somebody that pops into our life where we feel like we've known them before. I'm sure you can agree with that, Cindy. You've had those.
Totally. Yes. I'm sorry. I'm a little bit distracted, Scott, because I think a soulmate is actually crawling up into my lap in the form
I
of
just
my
noticed
cat.
that.
He's been a little bit distracting, but funny he shows up when we start talking about soulmates. And we definitely have a bond. So we can get to maybe animal connections later, but carry on.
We join a soul family, and it has been said that that soul family contains 144 souls. And it is through our multiple incarnations here in physical form that we will interact with souls from this group or soul family of 144 souls, which fall under the term of monad, the name monad meaning the same group. Really interesting because when you meet that person and you feel like, I've known this person before, but you can't really put your finger on it, really understand what it is, it's highly likely that person is part of your soul family. Now, I think, we romanticize the idea of soulmate, and we want to find our soulmate, and it's like Sleepless in Seattle, for example, right? Is that just incredible magical experience? And absolutely, it can be that. But the soulmates are not just romantic. I mean, they can be your mother, your father, your sister, your brother, your second grade teacher. It can be your colleagues at work. And I think what's interesting is that there are those people in our life where we are destined to meet because we have to maybe clear up some karma, resolve something, learn something from each other in this lifetime. And I do love the whole topic about it because we talked about relationships before. And if we go into this thinking that we're here to learn, and this is a growth opportunity, and that we never stop growing, and that this is not a one and done, but there are also consequences to everything that we do because our choices from today and before are going to create our tomorrow. So it lends a little bit more of a eternal aspect to our physical life, I feel, which makes it also not so scary or final, right? This physical existence. And then when you think that, oh, I have these people in my life that are probably part of my soul family, how nice. Now, what's interesting is that it's been said, and I think this is the truth, right? That when we incarnate, we go through this amnesia. We don't remember the past. We come here as an infant and we grow up and we are fully 100% immersed in our life here on Earth, which is great. For anybody that's interested in kind of taking a little bit of a trip backwards in time, past life regression and hypnotherapy can be an absolutely incredible experience. And I've done that quite a few times, specifically because I wanted to understand the deeper meaning between certain people in my life in relationships as to why they were what they were, why they were so incredible, why they were so intense, why they were so challenging. And it was absolutely amazing when I did undergo hypnotherapy, what I learned and the messages that I received that helped me really understand on a very deep level what I was experiencing in this life. So, as I said, it for me, it's the whole topic has been very interesting. It's one that made me feel like there's a lot more here than meets the eye. It's an eternal aspect to ourselves, and it's not readily available, but there are ways to get some of the information. Okay, as I mentioned, through hypnotherapy or past life regression.
Hang on, can you just stop there one second? Because
Sure.
this is new information to me, and I'm curious
Okay.
about this.
Mhm.
So first of all, first I want to make an observation before I ask the question. But first, I think it's a great setup that soulmates are not just romantic.
Yes.
I think again, we pick on Hollywood a lot, but Hollywood does romanticize soulmates, right? And you complete me. We talked about that in the relationships last time. I now also like the piece where you talk about there's a challenge. I can think of one person in particular who I am sure is a soulmate of mine, and we had a rocky patch. Now, the past life regression for me is a little bit of a left turn. I don't get it. Tell me more. Like, how does that get to soulmate relationships? And I guess maybe it's related to this other question I have is the 144, if that group exists for us, doesn't mean they're all incarnated, right? Some of them are quote unquote on the other side. Those, I guess, would be maybe my two questions as far as getting out of our physical existence into the past life and into that soul group. I don't know if you have answers or not, but those are my questions. Love to hear your thoughts.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, the easier one is the 144 souls that are in our soul group. No, we're not all incarnated at exactly the same time. That's absolutely true. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there might be lifetimes that we are not in contact with certain souls in that group. The hypnotherapy past life regression, what are some of the specific questions?
I guess, well, I mean, I understand. I mean, I've actually done only one, but I've done a past life regression, but I guess my experience was going to find out who I was potentially in past lives, not necessarily on a soulmate level. So that's the disconnect for me. Like, how does the past life regression or hypnotherapy go to your soul group specifically?
Got it. I've done that too, where I've gone into different lives without a specific purpose to identify the meaning behind that life or connection to a relationship in this life.
Mm-hmm.
The other way that I've done it is because there's been people in my life that have impacted me in a very intense way. And usually there was always some difficulty. I wanted to understand, like, what's behind this? There's got to be some reason that I'm going through this. Mm-hmm. And logically, my mind had a lot of different ideas, but my ego was also saying, of course, this is not right. This needs to make sense. Well, it didn't really make sense. And so I went into some of the regression sessions specifically with the purpose to understand what was going on. What is it I need to know?
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. And so as we time traveled, and then I came out on the other side or into that lives, because it was several times, into those lives, I would see in front of me this scenario, this life really unfolding, and key moments in that life that helped me understand and make sense of what was going on in this life right now. Now, I could have been a woman, the other person could have been a man, vice versa. It didn't matter the relationship, right? But right. The interaction, the dynamic in that life, whatever moments I was seeing, with, of course, the direction and the guidance and the questioning of the hypnotherapist, because we had a conversation prior to this so that she would know some of what to ask. And then she just kind of took over as I was talking and answering under hypnosis, of course. So it's quite a powerful experience because you know what's happening, but you don't know what's happening as it's happening. But then when I listened to it, the recording, it was absolutely fascinating what information came through. And as I said, I've done this multiple times, and it's been, I kind of joke because I did it several times during COVID, and I told a few close friends of mine who weren't going to judge me for any of this, well, I can't really travel, so I might as well just time travel. And it was an amazing experience.
Yeah,
it really was.
So from a soulmate's perspective, then, when you're out, I mean, are you uncovering themes between you and your soul group? Or this, or I know, so we'll talk about twin flame, which I believe is what you're referring to in a future podcast, but which is definitely a very interesting story. Are you learning about the soulmate relationship, the soulmate? Like, what was happening when you did this? I'm totally curious.
Yeah. So, no, good question. So, I was learning about different lessons and experiences that I was going through in this life and experiencing, and then I could see how in previous lives what kind of created the scenario for this, like what led up
Ah,
to this. As I said a few minutes ago, if we go into this with the idea of we are eternal, this is not a one and done. We're part of a much bigger group of souls that are here with the overall intention of each one of us learning, growing, ascending, and becoming more. So that's what I also then learned was, so this person has really come into my life to help me in this area. This person has come into my life to help me in this area. A lot of times it's very mutual. We're both here to support each other and help each other. They're not all challenges either. Some of them are just really great, fun interactions that are, almost like the rest stop. Along the way, you have some difficult moments, and you have this person that's just there, and it's a really fun, wonderful dynamic that that this person will probably be in your life for a very, very long time.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's my
So
experience, I think, with non-romantic. I
right.
don't know that I've had a soulmate romantically, but as we were talking before we started the podcast, I think I've had them with not like, I think my mother was a soulmate, right? But not, I love my father, but I don't think he was like, if we think about the soul group, I don't think we were in the same soul group, even though I loved him very much. And I think most of my soulmate relationships have had that like coming home, that rest stop feeling. That's what made me so interested when you started talking about it at the beginning, where you can also have this little scratchiness. Cause I was like, oh, one person who I think is probably one of my deepest soulmates. Actually, we had that little friction at the beginning. And then we got through it. Right. So I always think of soulmate relationships, a comfort zone, a comfort food, if you will, if we can equate relationships to food. So I just love all the stuff that you're just widening my perspective on soulmates and how that happens. And I do think there are lessons. I like the lessons piece that come. And as we mentioned in our last podcast with relationships, they are always an opportunity for us to grow, whether it's not a soulmate, just a regular relationship. It's a soulmate. We'll get to karmic. We'll get to twin flames. All of the relationships are really great growing opportunities for us. So I love that you went back now I'm getting the tie-in, right? Of going back and finding like, what's the thread of your soul and then your soul groups coming through. Is that
Yeah.
a fair summary of kind of what you just said? Like
Yes,
that thread keeps
absolutely.
coming through. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I didn't do it with all the time. I mean, it's not like I'm on the hypnosis table every week. So don't misunderstand me, right? I've done it several
Let's
times.
set this record straight.
Full
You're still
disclosure,
grounded. You're still here.
I do love the experience. I have to say, I really do. It's phenomenal.
Yes.
But I've done it quite a few times, and I've done it mostly with those difficult situations or those difficult relationships, those challenging relationships in my life to understand more. I've also done it with the great ones too, to understand like what's here, because obviously something is here that's working really well. And it's been really fun. It's been great to go back to the past and to see, and we're talking sometimes hundreds of years ago, and to understand, oh, here's what's going on a bigger picture. And the other thing I wanted to say is, if we're going to talk about food, let's just make it soul food,
I
right?
like it.
Wouldn't that be
soul food? Yes.
right?
That's very on brand.
I have one example that I can share, which is a person that's been in my life now for almost 30 years. And it was this really good friendship. Everything worked out really well, but then there was periods of separation, and then a friendship for a few years, and then long periods of separation. And we recently reconnected back in early March of last year. And I have to say, it's been fascinating because this is a person that, we understand each other really well. There's, I think, tremendous respect and admiration for each of us. And even though we had not been in contact for so many years, I think the last time was about 7 years, that we've just kind of synced up again, and we regularly are in contact. And it's that, and I even made the comment by saying, after a few months of being in regular contact, I said, I'm actually blown away that this is this friendship is become what it is after all this time, and after all that we had gone through, particularly with all the years of separation and just falling out of touch. And I said, I really feel like on a soul level, like a piece of me that was missing has been found. And it's really a powerful experience, truly a powerful. And as you said, like soul food, you talk about that comfort food, that really just that food that makes you feel good. Having this person in my life is a comforting feeling.
Yes.
And I sometimes I say to myself, but why? Like the mind wants to know why. The logic wants to know, okay, what's really going on here? I don't think there's really an answer other than it's just good that we're in each other's lives for whatever reason. It works, and I'm convinced that we are part. I mean, there is no book I can go to and put the names in this and see, are we in the same soul family? But I really do believe that we are in the same soul family, and a lot of what we talk about here, we have to really feel into it, right? It's not that logic, trusting our feeling and trusting our inner knowing. And in this example that I'm sharing right now, I do trust that, and it feels great. And he said the same thing, which has been good too. We don't see each other maybe once a year. It's almost like touching wood. It's almost like that grounding feeling that neither one of us had for so many years, and weren't aware that we didn't have it, and existed in life perfectly fine without it. But the fact that we have it now, and it's a phone call or a text or whatever it is, it's nourishing for the soul.
For sure. And I'm really relating to this. If I just think about this one person I was just referring to, that we had was a former boss and now a good friend. Like, we don't talk a lot either, but I think it's that soul food. It's that deep familiarity. I love the touching wood piece. It's just that deep knowing that that person's there for you and they love you, not in a romantic way, but like in just a soul to soul, like you've had maybe the lifetimes together. And I don't know, there's just some level of familiarity and knowing that you feel. And he is a person who, I don't speak to him. We don't live geographically close to one another, but I know if I was in deep trouble, personal trouble, mental, emotional, physical, whatever, he'd be there if I asked, right? I know that for sure, which is, I think that's the comfort piece. Like if you want to put the mind with the soul, like the soul knows. And then your mind, the way my mind justifies is that like, he's the person you call if you go to jail. Like hopefully never I'm in jail, but if I'm in deep, deep trouble, I'm distressed, whatever, there is that person and I for him, if really needed. No, we both have other people in our lives that would most likely be there for us, instead, but it's like that person's there if I really, really, really need it.
Right. And it's that comforting feeling, isn't it?
100%. And you're right. It's hard to articulate. Yeah, I think the closest thing is, the touching wood, the grounding, I don't know. I feel it even if I think of my body right now, I feel it in like my stomach, my center, right, of just comfort.
That really resonates with me when you say about feeling it in your body, and I will say the same thing. And the other thing is that the people that are the closest in my life in the soulmate category, and again, we're not talking about romantic, right? We're talking about friends, and mostly friends. I mean, the family is a different scenario, but mostly friends, and some just colleagues that have been there for such a long time. There's almost sometimes nothing to say, if you know what I mean. It's like we know each other so well. There's no apologies needed. There's no shame. There's no judgment. It's particularly with this person I'm talking about now, after all of this time, it's almost like being reborn into this connection, into this friendship. And it is more fun than it ever was, probably because we're so much older. But it's just like, okay, here we are. Let's just have fun with this. It's a very relaxing, supporting, and grounding connection all around. Does that make sense?
It totally makes sense to me. Totally makes sense to me. Yeah. I mean, it feel like a soulmate. You just know. Somehow you just know.
You do.
It's hard to describe, but I think anybody listening has those people where years can go by, months, weeks. You just pick up where you left off.
I would say let's not make the assumption that a soulmate relationship is always this wonderfully easy relationship, because some of the ones that I've gone through have been very challenging. But when I step back, out of my mind, out of my ego, and I look at it with a much bigger view, I can see the reasons behind it for both people and how we both grew from that experience, which then deepened the relationship. And you touched upon that too, right? With your example.
Yeah, you know what? I can just go there. I know he won't have any issue with me sharing. And so, just give you an example. So I worked for this person, and I was pretty young at the time, and he was very established in his career. He was the general manager where I was working, and I was assistant, right? So I worked for him, and we had a bit of a pissing contest, pardon my language, but there was an incident that happened in the organization, and he made a blanket decision. I took exception to it as you're lumping me in with this person who you think has questionable integrity. How dare you, right? So I had my little ego moment. We had a little ego moment, right? So I told him I wasn't going to sign it because I thought it broke the trust and whatnot. So he didn't speak to me for a week at work. And it would be uncomfortable in a way where he would say, I was in charge of the big New Year's Day event. We had a big party. And he would speak to everybody else about the party but me. I mean, it was super childish. And I would tell him, I mean, again, if he's listening, he knows it. But I wasn't backing down either, right? I wasn't saying I'm sorry. I wasn't signing the agreement. We both dug our heels in. And it eventually came to a head, right? And we just decided to agree to disagree, but that was always there. So fast forward several years later, we had just kept in touch. We got through that. And there was, I don't even remember the circumstances, but we were having a conversation, and he was getting that, I'm not going to speak to you again thing. And I just I called him on it. And this is my one person where I was not that people pleaser, which is, maybe that's part of the soulmate piece of it. But I just said, you know what, if you want to delete me, that's fine. But this is, how I see it. And it just took the zing out of any of that friction, any of that ego stuff out of it for both of us. And I don't remember the exact response, but he was like, oh my God, you're right. I was going to delete you. And this is a pattern he had in his life of getting mad. He was also Italian, Scott, very mercurial in his moods. And it just deflated the ego stuff between the two of us somehow. I don't know why, but it just was it was the culminating moment. And since then there's been no friction, super supportive of each other, just dropped way down into our hearts and out of our heads, and has been, he's the person that if I was in deep, deep trouble, he'd be there, and vice versa. But it came to a head, and it wasn't easy. It was hard. I mean, I'm a people pleaser. It was very hard to be to stand my ground, because every part of my being wanted to be oh, okay, here you go. But there was a stronger piece of me that was no, and I don't know why it was with him. Maybe to your point, going back into the past life regressions, that's something that had to come forward here, or that's maybe a piece from way back that I brought forward. And in this instance, I was no, I'm not doing that. I don't know. I mean, I haven't gone back to do that exploration, but so I agree. It does not have to be just this yummy soul food, perfect, relationship. Although I can think of those examples too.
Yeah, there are those examples, and a great example with what you just shared right now, because he pushed you, and you grew from it, and he grew from it, and now you can both talk about it and laugh about it. And that's what I can do with some of the soulmates that I have in my life, where there were difficulties in past times, and sometimes I'll bring them up just for the heck of it because they're so funny, they're so ridiculous, and we both have a great laugh over it.
Oh yeah, I mean, we both joke about he wouldn't speak to me, right? And vice versa. And I mean, I pushed his buttons too. To your point, absolutely.
Right.
We both were push really hard.
Oh yeah, in the right order, and then kaboom.
Yes.
All right. On that note, let's take a short break, and we're going to come back and talk about karmic relationships. You're listening to Soul Logic, shifting you from a corporate mindset into a conscious mindset. Check out our course online at roadmaptoawakening.com, helping you bring the practical into awakening and make sense of what's happening on your journey.
Anytime we speak about past life regressions, hypnosis, Reiki, any kind of spiritual thing that you want to try, I think it's really important who you select to take you to that experience. So before we jump into karmic, I would like to do one little sidebar of how to really find a person that's going to be responsible in guiding you on these experiences, no matter what that is. And for me, I think one, again, is feeling into that, that person. And are their words congruent with the experience that you're expecting? I'm not exactly sure how to articulate, but it is really important that you select somebody that you feel is going to be responsible with your experience. Because there are a lot of people who have good intentions, but can actually take you in a wrong direction. Do you have thoughts on that, Scott? On how did you select, or how do you find practitioners that you work with?
I do. And I think the most important thing that you just said already is feeling into it. We've talked about this so many times, right? I mean, we know intuitively, we know what feels right to us, and let's take our mind out of it. And I'll give you an example. One, particularly with the most recent regression that I've done several times in the last few years, the way I found the person was I was watching some videos on YouTube. I had no idea who she was. And I was watching several of the videos and I thought, wow, seems like a really cool person. I figured she was from North America. When I found out where she was located, it was 30 minutes down the road from me.
Oh.
And I was like, okay, so I don't believe in coincidences. And out of all the people I could have possibly found, just going through different videos on YouTube around a specific topic, the topic of twin flames, actually, I find this person that is geographically desirable, and her energy and what she was saying all resonated with me. There wasn't one thing that she said that I felt like, I don't really think she'd be a good fit. So then I found that she did hypnotherapy and past life regression. I contacted her, found out a little bit more about the service, and booked it.
Yeah. I think that's awesome. I think trusting your gut for sure. I mean, asking friends for referrals, certainly having a conversation before you buy anything should be something any practitioner would be willing to do for you, even if it's 15 minutes, just to kind of get a feel for that person. Asking for references or to speak to somebody else who's worked with them, I think is also fair request to any practitioner.
Absolutely. I agree with you, Cindy. The references is an important thing. Have a conversation. Again, trust your feelings, because you know what's right and you know what's not a match for you. And for anybody listening, if you have any questions, and maybe Cindy or I, if you hear something that we talk about, such as past life regression or something else, feel free to reach out to us. Email us at soullogic@roadmaptoawakening.com and ask us, and we'll be happy to refer somebody to you if we have somebody that we've worked with or know of somebody, because that's one of the best ways to find a reputable person that can help you deepen your own spiritual understanding and study.
Good. Okay. I just want to make that public service announcement, if we will, just to make sure that you're being thoughtful about people are being thoughtful about who they work with. So let's switch gears to karmic relationships. Now, in my experience, I've had a couple of these, I'm pretty sure. These are not gentle relationships. What's your experience been?
They're not gentle relationships. You're absolutely right. I mean,
they're intense, exciting,
they're intense,
but not gentle.
They're exciting. They can be fun. They can be beyond frustrating. They can be crazy making. They can come into your life like a freight train and
leave just as fast. Yeah.
Right. And typically they don't stay around a long time, because the sole purpose, no pun intended, SOLE, purpose, right, is to help us clear any karmic debris that we need to clear at that moment in our life to help us ascend and move on from a specific situation. So I can share a quick example.
Yeah.
It was a couple of years ago. This person came into my life and it was incredibly quick, incredibly intense. It was a friendship, but at the same time, it was something that was like really undescribable. And what was fascinating is it was felt on both sides. The synchronicity, the thoughts, be thinking the same thing at the same time. And it was the most mind-blowing experience, one of the most mind-blowing experience I had been through. And it lasted about 6 months with a couple of breaks in between. But as quickly as it came in, it ended. And what was fascinating is that I was able to learn through the past life regression the reason for it being in my life, the reason for him being in my life. And it was the sole purpose of it, again, no pun intended, was for me to be able to speak up. It was for me to speak up and to end a scenario that was happening in my life with a different person. So it was powerful. It was fun. I definitely grew through the experience. I think I don't think, I know both of us grew through the experience. It was not easy.
Yeah, I have I can think of two karmic relationships, both romantic. In both scenarios, really intense, like majorly attracted, just super electric, almost like to the point where my skin would be electric, like the hairs on your skin standing up. I mean, really highly charged. Maybe that's the right word, highly, highly charged. And to the point of making decisions I wouldn't normally make, right? And not necessarily a good way, or sticking around in the relationship when I know this is not serving me, but it's almost like an addiction. And I don't have a hugely addictive personality. And so that was like a huge warning sign for me in both cases, where I was really addicted and kind of sucked in very quickly, and allowing some behavior that, even as a former people pleaser, was beyond what I would normally accept. And I think the piece for me where I knew like this is probably not healthy is just that the need, right? The need of being with that person, or having that relationship, or what's next, or just being a little too far into it and kind of losing myself out of that piece. And how hard it was. They did come in and go fast. I did get out of both of them. But it was really, really hard, like harder than any healthy relationship, right? Where it might be painful in a healthier relationship, but really hard. I don't know if you had that experience too, but hard to let it go. And they kept coming back, or like, I'd be like, I'm out of here. And then next thing you know, they're coming back, and I'm like, I'm out of here, keep coming back. I mean, it took several times for me to leave, which was really hard, really challenging.
Yeah. So before I comment on that, I want to say that your little soulmate, your feline soulmate, is still there. He's hanging
Yes,
out.
yes.
He's loving this conversation. He's like, I want to be on camera. Little does he know it's audio only.
I know.
But he is very photogenic.
He is front and center.
He is front and center. Literally, he's front and center, looking at me right now. Hello there.
Yeah.
I so agree with you. And when I think about the people that have come into my life that have had that karmic soulmate role, right? Really, I guess they're part of the same soul family too. That karmic soulmate role, they've come in fast, they've left fast. There's been a trail behind them, and it's taken a long time to get back on track for me. And I would say to myself, my mind would say, what the heck is going on here? Like, why? This doesn't make any sense. And again, it wasn't until I did some past life regression that I found some of the deeper meanings for some of these relationships that I then said, oh, now I get it. Now I get it. And what I also learned is harder, faster, deeper, and more intense, right? When I wasn't getting the lessons that I needed to get in my life, another person would come in, another karmic, for example, and the experience was harder. The lesson was deeper. The learning was deeper. And it continued to be more intense until I finally let my ego kind of take a back seat and just said, okay, I'm not going to fight this. There's something here that I need to learn. And sometimes it was speaking up, like I just said, similar to what you shared a few minutes ago. Other times it was just other things, to be more compassionate, to be more open, to be more forgiving. Whatever the lesson was, when I stopped resisting it, is typically when the person left. And if they've come back, because a couple of them have come back, but because I wasn't resisting anymore and I was more accepting of what this dynamic was, it wasn't highly charged anymore.
This is the charge, right? That's kind of when you know you've healed or you've resolved it inside of you. Because I agree, I definitely have resolution, at least on my side,
right,
with both of them. And if either one of them came back at this point, I would be like, whatever, like, no.
Right.
But in the moment, very hard.
Until we've gotten to that place where we've made the peace, we've learned or whatever we had to learn. And again, we don't really know what we're there to learn. that's the other thing too. It's not like we have this checklist. Okay, you need to meet this person in 2022 to learn this. No, we don't have that. We don't know. We have this amnesia.
I know. I'm thinking I need to go do past life regression just to figure, because I'm not sure I evaluated it that much. It actually scared me, like how deeply I could fall into it, honestly, because I think I'm a very independent person and logical, against our logical post.
Sure.
But both of them drew me in so emotionally that it was really hard to distract or to disengage myself. And, I guess, certainly boundaries. I've definitely met the outer edge of my boundaries with both of them. So maybe that's a piece of it. But yeah, I mean, I can tell you, I even had, I would say in both cases, somewhat of an intervention. With the first one, I had a dream and I was in an elevator and we were at the top and we went down and the third person, and it like deposited him on one floor and we went down and deposited me on another floor. And I woke up and I was like, I woke up. Right? I was like, oh, it was just really intense. And I did make the move after that. The second one was a friend was like, what are you doing? Like, who are you? Like, why are you accepting this? Why is this okay? What are you, like, truly, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And it was that outside person where I was like, oh, what am I doing? Like, I'm letting myself get sucked into this. And I didn't really like it. I didn't like that piece of myself, so I guess maybe exploring that shadow end of being able to be susceptible and being sucked in, and facing that piece of you that's not as strong as you thought or not as independent as you thought, right?
Well, it wasn't, or it was until you met this person that
Right.
just kind of turned your world upside down. And as you said a few minutes ago, losing yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And you begin to question yourself. You're like, what is going on? Like, why am I doing this? I don't usually do this.
Yes.
Matter of fact,
Right.
I never do this. Not even usual. I never do this. Why am I doing this? This is not me. And
Right.
friends would say the same thing to me, like, what's happened to you?
Yeah.
This is not you. And what I also noticed, actually both parties noticed it, powerful mirrors for each other. I mean, it was like looking in the mirror, and they were tremendous learning experiences. They really were. Yeah. So I can look at them all now and I can say, it was good. That was a good experience. But going through it, it was not good and it was not easy. And it was a wild ride.
Yeah, I can't say that I feel like, oh, that was a great experience. I did learn a lot. I learned a lot from both of them. I think, the second one was shortly after my mother passed. So both my parents are gone and I felt highly untethered. And I think there was just this piece of me grasping at connection, right? And then this person just happened to show up and be like, oh, okay, you want connection? Like, come on in. I'll just like consume you alive. So, to pull myself out of that, interesting timing.
Interesting timing. Yeah, you were very vulnerable.
Very. And I didn't want to let it go because the attraction was so strong. But that attraction was also not healthy at all.
Right.
So I definitely, I guess that the lesson I pulled out of that is what is a healthy boundary.
Exactly. And those boundaries are so important, as we've discussed before.
Yeah. All right. We've been talking a long time. We should probably wrap this up, huh?
We have, but a couple of points before we wrap it up are that you and I, in our 50-ish, right? Mm-hmm. Feels like our generation and generations prior to us have had to go through years of experiences like we're describing here, particularly the karmic experiences potentially, right? And also then giving ourselves permission to live, to be, to express ourselves, to experience. Whereas what I will say is that my experience with the younger generation, and I'm talking like, 18 to 35, what a difference, right? They're coming in with so much less karma and so much, you could say, purer souls, in that they don't have nearly as much of the garbage to clean up like we did. They're okay asking for what they want. They actually know what they want, and they're not willing to accept anything less than what they want. And I think that's incredibly powerful. And I wish if I could have had a redo, that I was born probably 20 years later so that I could be, those mid 30s right now versus where I am, because I just find that to be so inspiring. And I know that many people, maybe our age and older, can sometimes think, well, maybe they're entitled and maybe they're not as connected or not as serious about certain things. And I would push back on all of that and say, actually, I think they're more connected. I think they're just the more connected with themselves, with their soul desires, with the reason why they're here. And they're absolutely okay sticking up for themselves and being really okay and clear on what they want. And I think that's amazing.
So true. And we've had this conversation. I agree with you. I mean, certainly, I'm sure we all have people in our generations that feel entitled, but I agree. I think they're hungry for what's next and without all this baggage. And I mean, I'm with you. I marvel all the time, like how well they understand their bodies and health and fitness. And like at 20, I didn't know any of that. I mean, maybe I thought about it a little, but I was not actively taking part in it and, or like engaging it for my own personal health. And yeah, I agree with you. So I love that, that karma can be cleared. And I do think if we go in that route, I think the more karma we clear as a collective, the more everybody can speak up for themselves, ask for they want, all that good stuff too, right? And for future generations too, but also now.
Absolutely. And that was part of what I learned through my studies and also some of the hypnotherapy was that I went through some difficult experiences, challenging, but I wasn't just clearing it for me. I was clearing it for the collective.
Yeah.
And as I said, it creates this bigger purpose as to why we're doing all this, why we're going through this. And I have a lot more appreciation for it. I don't want to necessarily repeat a lot of it, but I have appreciation for it. And our collaboration is really a direct result of that, of all the experiences that you and I have gone through. And now we're here just to share and talk and have these conversations. We have some bullet points, but a lot of this is unscripted, isn't it?
Yeah, we were talking, we tried to outline and I think we blew this one right out. I don't think we stuck to it at all.
We did, but that's part of the fun. We just trust our soul.
Right, exactly. But one thing we do try to do is end with how does it feel to trust your soul and bringing that in harmony with your logic. And we talked about that with the soulmates, I think, right? Feeling it. I think with the karmic, it's similar, it's a feeling, but sometimes that logic for me, at least with the karmic piece, needed some logic too. Like even if it came from outside, like my friend saying, "What are you doing?" Where it did jolt the brain to be like, "Oh, what am I doing?" Sometimes you need that external hit, or a dream, or something you see or read that just connects your mind, because sometimes you can go so into your emotions in your body that you just leave logic behind, and something's got to ping the logic. For me, at least in karmic, it's kind of opposite. Like soul feels like mind and body are pretty good, but karmic feels like you need a little logic hit to snap you out of it.
And from another person sometimes, right? Or sometimes you're reading a book and you read a passage in a book and you're like, "Oh, wow, this does make sense. Now I get what's happening." Or you see a video on YouTube and it's the wisdom and the learning can come from anywhere. Now that's one thing too, is if we're going through something like that and it is a difficult situation, ask for help. It's not weak to ask for help. Ask for help. But when the help comes, when the wisdom comes, be open to it. Like it could be something you read, it could be something on TV, and that message resonates with you. And that's where we get to then feel into it and say, "Oh, okay, there's a message there for me. Now what do I need to do with it?"
Yeah. I mean, we talk a lot about inner authority, but definitely that message can come from external too, to kind of spark that inner authority to be, "Oh, wait, right. Let's just check back in." So I agree.
Totally.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for listening to this episode. I hope you enjoyed our discussion on soul families, soulmates, and karmics. We'll see you in the next episode of Soul Logic. At Soul Logic, we're excited to explore all of these topics and spirituality that is not
right.
Exactly. We have our online course, Your Roadmap to Awakening. You can see it online at roadmaptoawakening.com. I'm Scott Masciarelli.
I'm Cindy Jennings. We're so thrilled you joined us today.
We'll see you in the next episode. Take care.